Today, we are speaking with Michael Stein. Michael is an entrepreneur, actor, comedian, filmmaker, and force for good. He is the founder and CEO of Abadak, a multi-million dollar tarp company doing good works by donating thousands of tarps to the homeless. In addition, Michael has starred in the Dirk Diggler story, as well as producing and directing documentaries, award winning short films, and the movie Love Hollywood Style. Michael also performs stand up comedy and is the podcast host of Long Shot Leaders. All of his ventures have an emphasis on environmental well being and charitable causes. I can't wait to learn more. Michael, please tell me a bit about your story. And I'm curious to learn how you went from producing documentaries and short stories to starting a multi-million dollar business within a year. Here's the big question. How do you create your most authentic, successful, and fulfilling life? The Fresh Blood podcast studies the stories of people over the age of 40 who are thriving in life, finding those core golden threads that connect the underlying successes, those universal truths. I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. Listen and learn from the stories of others to help you soar and live the life that you were meant to thrive in.
Well, I started doing documentaries because I was a nightclub promoter, and I had a great business doing that, but I wanted to be a filmmaker and an actor. So this natural segue was I said, look, I see, I did this documentary to get a big event. I saw these DJs and promoters were, becoming popular. They were like mini celebrities. I was like a little mini celebrity in LA, that in my age bracket for nightclubs. So everybody would put everybody on the invite and you'd have, people would come to the event. So I said, why not do a documentary? And, my friend, at the time, Paul Thomas Anderson had, he was starting to make headway in his career. So I said, I'm going to start to do documentaries on that. That'll be easy. So I did a documentary on the history of LA clubs. And that did well.
Oh, that's
Packed like
fascinating.
4,000 people at the Park Plaza Hotel. And then I started doing, I wasn't into the rave scene, but I saw this scene forming. So I said, I'm going to do a documentary on this rave scene and the history of raves and house music. Went around the country for 4 months and filming DJs, magazine writers, and promoters, and did a documentary on that. So I said, I'm going to leave my nightclub business and I'm going to start to get into film. So I worked as a production assistant, which is like getting kicked around a little bit emotionally and physically, as a peon,
Yeah.
but learned a lot in commercial film production. And then I did a short film after that, which won a lot of awards that you mentioned. That's kind of like, the reason why I did documentaries.
Yeah. No, I'm curious because you went from production assistant, which you said is a peon, and from there, then you started creating your own. What happened in there?
Well, I didn't want to pay for film school because I saw that my friend Paul, he dropped out of NYU after 2 weeks. And he just started making films. I said, I want to learn more about, the beginning, middle, and end of a production, real production. Because after my documentary, I said, I just did this on my own, but I want to see what the pros, the best. And I had friends that worked in commercial production. And I was like, when you're a PA, I was a production assistant, you're a peon, it was humbling to go from being a kind of a mini celebrity as a nightclub promoter going to being a production assistant. It's like, get me my coffee or go do this or
That is
empty out the
interesting.
cube truck with the equipment and all that stuff. But you learn a lot from the best too. Some of the best people, you get paid more per day on a commercial shoot than you do feature.
Oh, I didn't
So
know
a
that.
lot of these, yeah, like these big, John Schwartzman, who was like shot like all James Cameron stuff, like, all these big movies. He'll work on commercials as a DP because you're getting paid so much and the per diem and everything's so great in the commercials. But when you're a PA, you get to see the beginning, middle, and end, like 3 to 4 days of pre-production, a 3 or 4 day shoot, 3 or 4 days of post-production, and I get to work with different production companies. So I learned a lot in that 3.5 years doing that over and over and over again.
So you knew what to do. You figured out exactly what you needed to do, and you went and applied that and did it yourself.
Yeah, and then when I did my short film, Rituals and Resolutions, it was a state of the art production because I met all those people and they said, "Well, we'll help you out," So then they joined in, you could only do that with a short film because a feature takes too many days.
Yeah.
But I was able to have a really great production for my short film at a low cost because of that.
That's really smart. Really smart. Now, you went from your short film production to starting your company, correct?
Well, no, not necessarily. What happened was is that I did my short film, and then I got close to a movie deal in Hollywood. I met with everybody, like Joel Silver's office, Trimark Pictures, like so many big companies, and they wanted to make one of my screenplays. This script on underground gambling casino in LA, which really happened when I promote nightclubs. I used to do an underground gambling casino. So so yeah, yeah, we can get into that if you want. So what
Yeah.
happened was is, like, after, like, a year and a half of development hell, I was broke, I was in debt for my short film because it made half its money back, which is amazing because it was, an expensive short film, but it didn't make all its money back. So I was, and I couldn't get the production assistant work again, and I was like, "I'm just tired," because production assistant work, you live in a paycheck to paycheck. And I started off my life as a nightclub promoter that made a lot of money, and I was just, like, tired of it. I said, "You know what? I'm so tired of these guys not wanting to make my movies. It's all this red tape." I said, "I'm gonna make my own movie." But I was broke.
I
So
love
I
this
said,
though.
"Well, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur again, and I'm gonna start a business." I just figured I had to start something, so, bake your noodle a little bit, but when before all this, before I was a nightclub promoter, before I did stand-up, I knew I wanted to be an actor and a filmmaker and a comedian, but I also wanted to be an entrepreneur, and the first business I did a week after I graduated high school, I wasn't gonna go to college, was start a tool company because that's what my dad did in the
Oh,
'60s,
oh, okay. This is
right? And
fascinating.
and and my dad went off became a multimillionaire, but lost it all. He was a homeless kid, and then he became, well, a multimillionaire, and then he became homeless again after he was in this
Wow.
calculator business, but the business he had before the calculator business, they called him the calculator kid, but before that business, it was a tool business with a guy named Alan Smith. And Alan Smith, when my dad was off making good money with this calculator business, Alan Smith started a company called Harbor Freight.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you ever heard of Harbor Freight. They have like 300 stores across the country. They're like the import version of Home Depot.
Oh, wow.
They're
Okay.
they're like a 3 billion a
Big.
year,
Yeah.
3 billion a year company.
I'm clearly not doing a lot of building.
So I was like, I want to do that, but this is like a long time ago, but they were still like huge. So I failed miserably. But when I started my own company, I said, look, I know how I grew up around that. I seen this ebb and flow of failure and success. I said, I'm going to start my own thing on this new thing called the internet. And I'm going to sell a product that is like a tool. I don't want to sell tools. My dad's like, sell abrasive wheels, sell drill bits. I'm like, "Well, that's boring. I don't know." So one of the items that was tarps. I said, "This makes sense to me. It's colorful. It's used for a lot of different things." I could see like, it's kind of adventurous a little bit. You could do different things with them. I said, "I'm going to sell," and I heard like this guy that on the internet, in the late '90s was selling ceiling fans, and like he made tons of money off of that off the internet. Heard if you want to make money on the internet, you got to sell a product, sell a widget. I said, "I'm going to do that, and that's going to be my movie business." And I
Did it.
within 6 months, almost a year, I had made a $500,000, and that gave me enough money
Incredible.
to make the movie that I wanted to make, which was Love Hollywood Style, which
Incredible.
with Andy Dick and Coolio and Faye Dunaway,
That's amazing.
and that's why I started this business that I'm in today.
Now, what do you think was key for you for making that a success? Because let's be real, a lot of people try to do things like this and aren't always successful. So, what do you think was key for you for making that successful?
Desperation, number one.
Always.
Um, when I first made my first sale after like a couple months, I made a first it was like $17,500, which when you're trying to pay your rent check and don't know where your food's gonna come from, you're like, I remember this. Here's a good story. So guy's like, I need $17,500 worth of tarps. It's Friday. I need it by Monday. I'm like, no problem. I'll get it for you. And it's all online. So they didn't know I had a storefront or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm working on my house. I
Mhm.
pick up my PA friend because I'm still like, I just segued out of becoming a production assistant
Mhm.
still, living paycheck to paycheck. I pick him up. I go to Galpin Ford because I couldn't get a trucking company to deliver this product. So I get the Galpin Ford, which is the studio rental truck, and I packed this stuff in a studio truck, because I had a deal on that.
Making
And
it
then
work.
we drove on from LA to New York, no sleep, deliver the tarps, and
Wow.
I remember when after I delivered them, I cried because it was around Christmas time. I said, "I know where my rent's gonna come from. I know where I'm gonna get food now, and I can buy people presents for Christmas." So desperation is one, and when you're I don't know, that's I was just I've just seen that, you
Well, you
sometimes
clearly
I think it's
did
DNA.
whatever you need to do to make it work. You drove across country to deliver those tarps and make that sale, so you're making
That's
things
what
work.
I saw my dad do. I saw my dad, was successful when I was a young kid, and then he made I wanted to be the calculator kid, too. That was like a thing. So I was always prepared for that, like, and mentally. But then I saw him live in a van, and when he was fighting his way back, he would deliver these abrasive wheels and drill bits to body shops in this van that he was living out of to fight his way back after because it was crazy lifestyle. Um, just to, he made a lot of poor mistakes. But I saw this and I said, you no matter what, you can make something happen. So I knew that no matter how low you can get, I've seen the highs and the lows,
Yes.
from my dad, I guess.
What do you think you've learned from your dad that has served you the most?
The word that I grew up with is hustle.
Mm,
It's almost like a becomes like a mantra, like just in your nervous system to where it's a reaction to where you have to hustle when everybody panics, you hustle. So
mhm.
that's like that's people think like, I can't do a business, everything needs to be perfect. I barely graduated high school, and I knew I wasn't going to go to college because I saw my dad. He'd never finished the eighth grade, and I just didn't need to make the same mistakes he did and do what that guy Alan Smith did from Harbor Freight. So I said, I'm going to do that, but I'll be like my dad and love what you do. It doesn't have to be your dream, but
Yeah.
love what you do and be a happy person.
Mhm. I agree. I completely agree. Now, we've talked about a lot of things. You've had a lot of successes. You've kind of reached a lot of those goals that you set out to do. So I'm curious, what do you feel has been one or two of your greatest successes and what did you learn from it?
Okay. Well, when you want money, the first success when you make your I made $1,000,000 in a day, and I was like, "Wow."
Amazing. Yeah.
I was like, "Wow." I said, This is it. I'm never gonna have a problem. I'm never gonna have a problem again." You think that you're like, "Well, I know I'm gonna have problems, but, like, this is" and that's not true, but that was a success, a monetary success,
Yes.
and, but I think that, when you it's funny, I'm like Adam Sandler in movie, Happy Gilmore. He puts a hockey guy on top of his golf trophy.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, when I am successful at stand-up comedy, and you really don't get paid that much at all to do that, then that's a success. Or somebody bet me one time, because I was a fitness trainer, but then, you have hills and valleys of fitness,
Mhm.
and I looked like I was getting heavy, fat. So somebody's like, You're gonna end up like your dad, who ended up being fat," and he's like, "You gotta, you gotta, you're not gonna be able to, do this the way you did." I said, I bet him $500 I could lose like 35 pounds in like 3 months, and little things like that. When somebody says you can't do something, you end up doing it. But as far as my success, I've had monetary successes. um, my short film, winning, the 2 largest short film festivals in the world, that was a success because I
That's
really
pretty
wanted to do
exciting.
that. And, I think, being I never thought I'd be successful at because my dad wasn't successful at marriage, so I didn't think I'd be successful at marriage. But I think my wife, if she was here, she'd tell you I'm a good guy and I did well at that. So that's
Yeah.
important
Still
to make
married.
it to
Yes.
make it work on a day-to-day basis and get along with somebody and not have them be pissed off at you.
Yeah.
That seems like a win.
It's a big accomplishment to have a long-term relationship where you still like each other at least, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're like, have fun with them and you're not resentful, and
Yeah.
it's really a nice harmonious relationship, and your kids seem like you have a good relationship with them. To me, that's a success.
It's a big win. It really is. Yeah. Now, what about the flip side? What about a time that you failed or big challenge or obstacle, and what did you learn from it?
You don't have enough on the time on this all the failures because I have way more many failures than I've had successes.
Well, isn't that
Um,
true with successful people though, right?
yeah, I guess. I'm ready for the embarrassment. So when I was making money, I don't know what they call it, ADHD or whatever. Somebody's working for me. I'm like, I'm so busy. You get the insurance. I just bought an Escalade. Get the insurance for me. And so I had 6 weeks of temporary insurance when you get a new car, and 2 days after that 6-week insurance, I never checked with her. She got the insurance. I thought she was I just spaced on it, and the car gets stolen, and I lost all of the insurance couldn't cover my car. That's bad. I've my first that job when I started to a tool business a day after I graduated high school, I failed miserably. I made 2 sales and I didn't make anything do anything after that, you know? I mean, I went to city college, and that's when I became a nightclub promoter 6 months later. So I guess out of like, whenever there's a failure, it always seems like out of desperation, once again. The success comes, so I became the number 1 nightclub promoter in my age bracket after 6 months after I failed at that business miserably. So, a lot more failures though. I mean, I always say this on the podcast or whatever, that Glenn Close in the movie The Natural says, "I believe we have 2 lives, one that you learn with and one that you live with after that." And
Ooh,
I definitely feel like, anybody that's younger, that's, trying to be an entrepreneur, that failure and they had a little bit of success, just remember those successes, you just need to grab onto those, but you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And then the other half of your life, you maybe learn with that. And then you go off from there and you do a lot better.
you do a lot of living. I like that. It's very true. We are doing a lot of living of the learning that we've done, have we not? I mean, I mean, with all of those things, because it's interesting how you said that because you've had a lot of successes, and you mentioned how you've had these successes, you're doing great, and then you might have found yourself broke afterwards, and then and then you went and did this, and so you've and I bring this up because you have been successful at a young age. Like you've been, you were successful at a young age, and you've been successful in your 20s and your 30s, your 40s. So what do you think is key to continued success in life?
Well, real quick, the first like 10 years of my life, I had learning disabilities. I was physically challenged. I was a premature baby. Grew up in a broken home, so I grew up with my grandmother telling me the mantra of, look, you're lucky to be alive because she escaped the Russian concentration camps at gunpoint. So and then hearing that I was lucky to be born because I was an oops baby. My mom would like sit there and say, I love my youngest son, but I drank, I smoked, I ran up and down the stairs. I'm like, Mom, they just want to order ranch or blue cheese dressed. Tell them what you want to order. She just tell everybody the story. So you hear this over and over again. It's okay. But, I think that you can only go up. And I think sometimes that's a good thing. So, what have I learned from the successes though?
What's key to continued success? What do you think has helped you be successful in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s? Is there something that has helped you keep going?
Yeah. I think that it's all a head game. I think that anybody can have success. I think that it's a muscle, and we need to there's almost something like an inner incantation that we need to tell ourselves. And in acting, it's there's a great teacher named Eric Morris who does it's called the Superman exercise. You basically count your blessings because you have so many failures, but you need to start to add up all the wins, and you need to tell yourself and build a crescendo of positivity, because most people do look at the weeds in their garden, but you got to take the weeds out, be cognitive of what caused them, and clean it up. And then boom, you build a crescendo of like positivity and momentum to where give yourself a mental environment to succeed. And I think that's key every day, nuts and bolts of doing every day, going in that fashion.
Yeah. I love that you're right. I mean, obviously we need to pull out the weeds, but I love that you said we need to figure out why they grew there and
Well,
get
sure, you gotta do that. You can't just say, "Oh, positivity, positive,"
yeah,
everything's great. No, if
yeah.
something I don't care if I can swear on here, but,
Go ahead.
your life is shit.
Yeah.
You're acting like shit. You make no sense when you say, you gotta mind 3 things when it comes to success, and that is everything's emotions, and it's the triad of emotions, and I talk about this all the time. It's your physiology, your focus, and your vocabulary. So
Mhm.
if you're sitting there and you're focusing on shit and you're talking, things that are not enabling you for success, and your physiology is droopy and your face is drawn, that's a recipe for failure. If you want to succeed on the day to day nuts and bolts, because we have thousands of impasses, our workday and our life is constantly like a plane that is guided by a computer off and on course constantly. That's how planes work. They're on a computer and autopilot's constantly taking it on and off course to readjust. And if you don't use your guiding light as your focus, physiology, and your vocabulary, your inner vocabulary, you will get whatever, 99% is going to be that product of that. How
Mhm.
could you ever be successful focusing on your failures, talking internally and externally about your failures, and then putting your body in the position of how you feel about your failures? It's just a recipe for for disaster.
You're so right. Our
It's like the
words are
opposite.
powerful, or
Every day you gotta have to enable yourself for success.
yes, and how we hold ourselves, our body language, the way we speak, the words we use, yes, it all adds up. It's very, very interesting. You mentioned that you had a lot of struggles when you were younger and had a lot of things that you had to deal with. I'm curious, what has helped you push through your difficult times?
I learned, it's making people laugh. I think, like, you find some kind of success. I was lucky enough to find some kind of success. So as the youngest, I turned out to be the entertainer. So I was like the comedian, and people would make fun of me sometimes. So the only way I would laugh at myself, self-deprecate or whatever, just get people to laugh, and that was the reward. So that was the first success. The second success, you're like, wow, that's just, you don't feel like you're successful still with one success.
Mm.
The second success was when I saw the movie Rocky when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I saw a guy like me. He was kind of funny. He wasn't successful, but he kept on trying. But he wasn't smart. The only difference is that he was fit and I was not. So I started exercising every day. I was like, exercising was a way of my life. So from 10 years old, I felt like that's when my life changed, because by the time I was 16, I became a physical fitness trainer, and I had really great success with physical fitness. So I said, okay, I'm funny and I'm good at physical fitness. And it only really took two things to really think of, like, I think that everything could be like this. As long as you work it out like a muscle, everything could be like that.
Yes, right? We work it out like a muscle and apply it over and over. I mean, I was just gonna say, you started young. You put your mind to it, and you did it young, and you
I
just
needed that time though. I was a basket case. Needed all the extra time I can get.
I feel like, when you're a basket case when you're younger, it gives you a lot of, perspective, if you will, for when you're older, if you ask me. A little bit of
I
a little bit of depth.
I guess, I think so. I think, like, you know, I don't know why. I guess I feel like I'm an underdog constantly, and I like it. I like it because that's an ownership of that I've taken. I've chosen to take that ownership of that. And, it's okay as long as you feel like you have I felt like I'm, as an older person, I feel like I have a pathway to success that feeds me every day. But, you feel like I feel like it's my cause celeb now, and you give yourself purpose behind those things that maybe were disadvantages in the past.
Right, right. Did you always have a sense of what your purpose was, or is that something that you had to stop and figure out at one point?
No, I mean, when you're young, everything, so much wasted time on the young, right? But when I had ADHD, I was put in a special school for special needs kids, like when I don't know, second grade. And you feel like, when my dad was successful, I'm like, maybe he just pays for people to, be friends with me. You don't trust anybody, because people would make fun of you all the time. So, like, well, everybody must feel that way. Um, and then, you start to see, I grew up in a really dysfunctional home, like, meaning, like, my dad was very crazy lifestyle. Speaking of boogie nights, I don't know, we haven't talked about that, but
Yeah, no, you're in Boogie Nights as well. So, okay, go with that. What was the Boogie Nights with your dad? You were going
He
some
he was like he had, there's characters that are loosely based on his personality. It was like he had orgy parties. He had, like, I was surrounded around, like, sex and drugs at a young age where I
and
never,
you're there.
like, it was around me. Like, I'd walk into his, he wasn't living with my mom. I'd walk into this greenhouse, had green artwork and green Cadillac out in front, and everything was green. And I was see, like, there was like, were there people here last night? I could feel that energy. You feel like the walls are still moving. And it's just that I had, you grew up with a crazy Russian grandmother, and I had a big family, and you're the youngest, and some people got involved in my dad's lifestyle, some people didn't out of the family.
Mhm.
So it was crazy. So yeah, as far as the Boogie Nights connection, my first acting job was playing Dirk Diggler in the Dirk Diggler story. I played Dirk Diggler, and that eventually became the movie Boogie Nights, which I appear in as well. So that's the whole Boogie Nights connection.
Yeah, no, what an experience at that age too. What what did you learn from that experience? That's what I wanna know.
Oh, from being in the Dirk Diggler story?
Yeah, yeah.
I was 20, and, I was a nightclub promoter, and I learned I didn't think anybody was gonna, you don't see anybody be successful at film because you grew up in LA and you're like, everybody wants to be an actor. Everybody wants to be a filmmaker. It's like, this is so rare. And to see, a friend of yours that starts from nothing also and becomes successful, you're like, holy shit, I could do that too. Because at this point, I'm thinking, well, I've done stand up. I'm a nightclub promoter. I did a good job acting in that thing. I think I can make films, and that's
Mhm.
why just when you see other people do it, I think that's the thing. You got to believe in yourself. You can
Right.
believe that there's no difference between some old guy that's been successful and the young people. It's just repetition
Yeah.
plus time plus
Mhm.
effort.
Mhm. And it really hits home when it's a friend of yours too, when you know the person, like, you know all their ins and outs and all of those, and you're like, "Hey, man, if this guy can do it, I can do it," I
Right,
find.
right,
Well, that's
for
the
sure.
beauty when you embody everything that you've got going on for you and you actually move forward with it, you give other people permission to do the same, and that's what's really cool about that.
Agreed.
So I'm curious, what is something that you've learned throughout all of your experiences that you feel has brought you the most benefit in your life?
That's a good question. What has brought the most benefit? What have I learned that gives me the most benefit? Well, for me personally, I can't speak for, but prepare.
Mhm.
Preparation is 95% success. And when you're an ADHD person like me, or whatever they call, I don't know, give it anything like, I've been told I have that. But maybe some else self-evident here today. But when you prepare, that's 95% of the challenge right there. So prepare, 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 but then act. You have to be able to act. Some people prepare and then I'll pull the trigger. You got to be able to prepare as much as you can, as much as you can stomach, and then you have to make have a dead goal, a goal that we're like, I don't care if I'm ready or not. This is the goal. I've given myself more than enough time for this. This is something I really want. So set a goal date, a day for that, and then just prepare as much as you can and take massive action. Uh, and also when start immediately when you set that goal. Immediate action. So those are like 3 things that are really important there, preparation. First of all, set your goal date. Find out when you prepare, you find out when can this happen, whatever it is, the success that I want, that's the date that this has to start. uh, the hard date. And then what can you do immediately? You have to do something right away to set your nervous system in motion for that. So you have to like if you're going to start a podcast, you have to like do something right now. As soon as the podcast is over, if you want to start a podcast, you need to go to Zencaster or something, and you need to purchase it or whatever. Learn everything about it. You say, and then set a date. I'm going to do it on this day and this day, and you have to do it.
I
That's
love
that's
it.
my
Great
recipe for
advice.
success.
Really great advice. And the setting the date, that is hitting home for me because I have some things I'm working on and I have not set that date. So I'm actually, after this, going to put a date in my calendar of when that's going to have to be done. So that's good stuff.
The date is important.
Yeah. Now, before I ask any of those questions, I'm just wondering if you have any stories rattling around in your head that are what you would believe to be one of your more entertaining stories that you think would be worth sharing with the audience.
God, I got several. You want like one that's I don't know, film related? I'll give you okay, here's a film one
Whatever you think is
related.
the funniest one.
I don't know if it's the funniest one, but it's an interesting one.
Okay,
It is
interesting.
kind of funny, but so I was doing extra work before I did my first acting role. This was a year before that, and I wanted to be an actor. So I'm being an extra on a movie called Less Than Zero. I was promoting my first nightclub, and I was handing out invitations. Got to see Andrew McCarthy, and then I'm hanging out with this guy, blonde-haired guy, and he and I were hanging out for like 3 days, and he's showing me all around the sets there, and I was like, he's an extra also, and he's been working on other, days. I say, "Yeah, what are the days you work?" "Oh, I passed around a football on this day and this day." We're doing party scenes. He goes, "Hey, you wanna meet Robert Downey Jr.?" "Yeah, it'd be great." The guy from Weird Science, and, he's really cool, because he wasn't a huge star yet, but he was
Yeah.
in cool circles. and we're shooting nights. So he gets out of his trailer at like 5:30 at night, just woke up, and he's like, disheveled. He's like, "Anybody got a light?" And I was like, "Wow, this guy's really cool." Not like Andrew McCarthy who tore up my invite. And, um, and then I'm just walking around and I became, I got the guy's number that I hung out with for 3 days that introduced me to Robert Downey Jr. He said he was trying to get acting work. And then it took me like 3 or 4 of his movies. I'm like, figuring out, I was like, "Holy crap, it's Brad Pitt." I was like, "Wow, that was, really wish he went to my club and we became better friends." And I saw here's the sad thing. This is the insecurity. When I was this is when I was still promoting clubs. I was doing a gambling party at Sundance, and I went to Paul Thomas Anderson's. He did his first movie called Hard Eight, and in that movie, Gwyneth Paltrow was, in the movie, and she was dating Brad Pitt at the time. And we're sitting there with her mom, Blythe Danner, and Gwyneth Paltrow, and Brad Pitt, and Paul, and Paul's girlfriend. I was like, I could easily go up to him right now and just say, I hung out for 3 days, but this is the insecurity, the imposter syndrome, whatever you wanna call it. This is
Syndrome.
the insecurity. I'm still, my 20s at the point. And then I was like, I don't wanna talk to Brad now, and tell him that I wanna wait till I'm up, 'cause I was like, my own career I was just gonna segue out of clubs and get into filmmaking. I was like, when I'm a big filmmaker, he'll be in one of my films, and then I'll just talk to him then.
Yeah.
And I never even talked to him since, and I was like, we sat at the table for like an hour and a half, eating lunch at this place and up in, Sundance, and so that's a little
Yeah.
weird story there
The
as far
regret
as
should
my
have
film
taken the
story.
opportunity, one of those, which makes me wonder, do you have any regrets in life that
Ah, a lot. Yeah. I mean, everybody's got regret, say, "Well, would you really change anything?" Yeah, sure I would. I mean, if you had a chance, but you wouldn't change anything and not knowing if you were gonna go back and not know anything.
Yeah,
But if you could know what you know now, yeah. But,
yeah.
yeah, tons of regrets, you know, so many, you burn through so much money in business, making so many mistakes,
Mm,
advertising mistakes, business choice mistakes, just stupid mistakes,
mhm.
buying crap that you don't need, not investing in certain things like, when somebody says, "Yeah, the Winklevoss just did, they invested in this Bitcoin thing," and it's like, I'm telling you, you have to do it. Nah, it's stupid. So so many mistakes.
Bitcoin.
And,
Oh, I kicked myself over that one too.
I got like, my friends, "Yeah, you just do stupid." Some things are good, like, I wear something like a badge, like my friend who said, "Look, we're gonna be opening up our band is opening up at the Whiskey on Sunset." It's a big iconic place, The Doors and every big band in the world played there. I'm like, well, this is when I started doing stand-up, like, it was my 2nd gig. I was like, I'm gonna do stand-up there." They don't know it, but I'm gonna do stand-up because I got a free crowd. I don't have to wait in line. So I got booed off stage because, like, they're like, "We don't wanna hear a comedian wanna introduce the band." Who could say they got kicked off the stage of the Whiskey? That was fun. That was
You know,
good.
you can put that on your bucket list, you know?
Yeah. That I didn't get booed, I got kinda escorted by a friend, you
Hey, I
know?
think that's cool.
Yeah. I got booed off stage once. I wasn't doing stand-up, I got booed off stage when I was doing that documentary tour that I told you about.
Yes.
We showed the LA documentary that I did at, like, 12 different cities, and when I went to New Orleans, I said, "Okay, everybody," we plan out to where there's one movie room, like a documentary room, and then there's a big dance room, right? 'Cause, people come in the room and say, "Oh, we're talking." So it was kind of like this whole thing. I get to this big, glorious, like, beautiful arena, and then the guy's like, "Yeah, this is it." I said, "Well, where's the documentary room? Where's the theater room?" Like, "No, no, this is gonna be it. There's just stop the music at midnight, and everybody's really excited about it. So you're gonna get like 1,300 people, and you're gonna stop the music, and I'm gonna talk to them on some video screen right here."
Yeah, no,
He's like, "Yeah, it's gonna be great. Everybody's really
that'd be
excited
great.
about it." I said, "You're an idiot." I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, no problem. It's your money. Let's just do it."
Mhm.
I got booed off stage so bad. It was so like, "Boo, get him," like, mean. And I walked off, and I don't know if you've ever been to New Orleans, go to Bourbon Street,
Love New Orleans, yes.
and it's the first time I've ever been there, and I'm walking down, the bar's just opening up because I got booed off stage and, like, the bar's open late there, and I'm walking down there, I'm like, "Excuse me," 'cause my DJ friend's still DJing, right? And I'm, like, alone now,
Huh.
clubbing. And I
After
was
being
like,
booed.
"Excuse me, "Do you know I could find, like, a place to get some oysters around here?" And he walks right up to me, and he hawks a loogie and spits it on the floor of his own saloon and says, "There's your damn oyster."
Oh,
I just
oh,
got booed off stage.
yeah.
This guy, I feel like there's no humanity in the world, so I just go to O'Brien's where they have the blended drinks, and I got each one of those, and that's
Each one.
yeah,
So
just wanna
that's
taste it.
that's how you dealt with the booing. You're like, "I'm just gonna go
Yeah,
have
and I
something
don't
to
drink either, so that was, like, fun. Yeah.
do." Had a great time in the New Orleans streets that night,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanna ask really quick because you've mentioned this gambling thing. So did you start this gambling in the backstages of Hollywood?
It's a really great story. So my friend Eddie Hara, who's I think he's supposed to be related to Harrah's Hotels.
Okay,
You could look
makes
it up.
sense, makes
Um, he was a he wanted to do a club, and he wanted to do gambling in it. So I was the nightclub promoter, and they wanted to do the gambling. So they didn't cut me in on the gambling, but so I'm bringing in all the people, and I have another friend of mine, this guy Larry Pollock. He won't care that I mention his name. He actually ended up owning at the time, he was just a fledgling nightclub promoter, but he owns the Saddle Ranch restaurants right now, the one
Oh,
with the
cool.
Mechanical Bull on
Love
Sunset.
them. Yes, did that for a birthday one year.
Okay, cool. So that's my friend Larry, and Larry comes to me and says, "Mike, I want you to do this. These guys, do it on Friday nights with me. You could still do the Sweet Daddy Brown's thing that they called it. You know, it was a very big club in LA. It was huge dancing and then this gambling." And I said, "Well, it's a different night. They won't care, you know. It has to be on Friday. I can't do it on Saturday because I'm doing this." I said, "No problem." Larry's concept, he's a really good mind. Larry's concept was, let's just get hotel suites, like the nicest hotel suites on Sunset, like the Mondrian or Chateau Marmont, whatever. Sometimes adjoining suites, and we'll just have the gambling. We'll let people in for free. We'll do pari-mutuel. We'll let them go 1 out of 5, and 1 out of $5 just goes to the house. So the faster you are, so we had professional dealers. It was free drinks, it was like a really high end kind of thing. It blows up. It becomes like a huge thing, and the other guys start to get upset about it because
'Cause
they
it's getting
figure,
big.
some
Mhm.
people are like saying, "This is the new shit. This is much
Mm.
better,"
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm a part of both, and like they're getting upset, like, "You gotta quit that and just do this." And I was like, "Well, you guys didn't cut me on the gambling, and this has nothing to do with you. It's on a different night." So there was, somebody that owned a bar that I got approached that was basically, related to the Castellano family.
Mhm. Oh.
So they wanted to be partners, so to speak, and this is the problem with doing anything that's not legal. So lo and behold, we stopped because West Hollywood Police Department actually found out what we're doing because there was like 300 people waiting to get inside. There were 300 people on Sunset,
Oh, wow.
and it just we didn't have invites. It called
Word
select
of mouth.
people, like a
Wow.
list. It was like in those days, it was a phone call.
Huh.
You had passwords to get into and it was crazy.
That
So
is crazy.
that's how I got the idea to do we built the tables ourselves. We had
Wow. What an
professional chips. It was like
experience.
a yeah, it
Well, you
was
got something to fall back on, you know? Yeah.
yeah, I wrote a screenplay about it. Somebody said, "You write a movie about it." I did write a movie about it, and I almost got a movie deal from it, but I had to make Love Hollywood Style instead because I was pissed off.
So that one's in your back pocket too. We might see that one day. You never know.
I get once in a while, somebody, from back then, when I just wrote a screenplay a year and a half ago, which has nothing. It's about a dysfunctional family in wine country up in
Oh,
Northern
that sounds
California,
interesting.
which I'm not from, but I just liked it up there.
Mhm.
So I started shopping that around, and then people say, "Well, this is not right for us because we want something more action oriented." And they see that, and then they're like, "Yeah, we like this script," but it's a tough business, and my other business does so well. So, oddly enough, what I'm doing now is that crazy film that I told you about, that Love
Mhm.
Hollywood Style,
Mhm.
we just found all the footage. The filmmaker, another filmmaker friend of mine, when he was starting out his career, he filmed the whole making of me struggling with my business that almost
Ooh,
bottomed out, working out of the house, work out of this rented,
interesting.
shack that I lived in Sherman Oaks, and, the whole thing with trying to get Faye Dunaway and Andy Dick and all these crazy actors, to be in this film that just kept on blowing up and me struggling working out of this, the whole thing. But it was a crazy production, and I almost lost my whole business that I started for the film. So we're doing a documentary about it's called Burning the Boats, and it's about passion versus opportunity and what people will throw away in their life to try to reach their dream.
I love it. I can't wait to watch that. That sounds fascinating. Anything else on your horizon that you're working on?
Uh, well, burning the boats is we and my tarp business is, it sounds funny, but
Yeah.
we're inventing a product. It's weird because people say, "What the heck? How are you doing like this kind of conventional business and you still want to do something in entertainment?" Uh, it doesn't make sense. I guess my life doesn't make sense, but we are expanding the business to where we're launching in a little over a year from now. We're launching a branded product of a very special type of tarp
Great.
that will hopefully define this industry the same way that like Yeti defined the cooler.
Cool. Very
And
cool.
so there's that.
That's
There's the
exciting.
documentary Burning the Boats. And
Your podcast.
before the year, I promised my friends out here. I live in Georgetown, Texas. I don't live out in LA. I promised I would start doing stand up at the local place out here, Barrels and Amps in Georgetown, Texas.
Great. Great. Getting back to it. And then now tell us a little bit about your podcast, the listeners, because
Oh, yeah, there's
it's a great
that.
podcast.
That's why I'm here to
Yeah.
promote the podcast. um, Long Shot Leaders. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We break out a new episode. And it's about people that have overcome large obstacles to find success.
Wonderful.
Um, People that want to talk about miserable, wonderful, glorious failures, and also how they found success and what they did to attain that, and share their life. I like to tell a story about their life, the origin of their life, because I think that we learn by the story of someone, not
Mhm.
just like about the how tos of them.
Yeah, I agree. Agree. So before we wrap up, I love to ask people. This is one of my favorite questions. What is it that you are sure of in life?
Well, death, that's one. Taxes are not so sure because, I mean, you can go to Puerto Rico and you really only pay 4%, so barely. So, but, I'll just go with the granted, death is the only sure thing in life
It is the only sure.
because everything else is pretty much. I mean, you would say that, like, if you're 5'6", you can play in the NBA, but Spud Webb, like, denied that, reality.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
everything's a
Thank
lot of
you
things are
for reminding me
possible.
that.
I can't think of much more other than death. Is like, you can't fight that, you can't beat that.
Can't be.
Time is your only enemy, as Charlie Chaplin used to say.
Oh, I like that. Time is the only enemy. Of all the things that you've seen, because I figure you've probably watched a lot of movies, been in Hollywood, what have you, seen a lot of talks. Is there ever been a movie or talk or book or something that had a big impact on your life that you think others would benefit from as well?
Well, of course, it's Rocky. When I was a kid, I had to go to a psychologist after the first couple of years of saying that because I went out on VHS and I would watch it every day. And like the kid comes home from school and that's all he does is watch Rocky. Um, so as far as that, yeah, that's obviously I do a podcast called Long Shot Leaders.
Mhm.
Obviously but I think that looking back on, not to be poetic about it or not answer your question, but looking back on your own failures and trying to find a way to not look at them like they're so bad. Look at them. Every failure I've ever had, I've been cheated on by girlfriends and fiance. A lot of people. Like just you try to, you either date your mother or father, right? I dated my dad for a while, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so you look at all your failures and try to turn it into something that will inspire you. So
Mhm.
I would, when I did stand-up comedy, of course, comedy set in the negative. I would, look at all your failures to inspire you. Look at, and you're always gonna get inspired by your wins, but wouldn't it be great if you can learn from your failures and then have those inspire you and that make your mission to overcome those?
Yes.
So
Right.
that's what I would say. I would say if you wanna get inspired, look at your own story.
Mhm.
And on that note, if anybody has a long shot story, go to longshotleaders.com and contact us because I'm just happy as a clam talking to people like you and talking about long shot stories, talking about how people overcame their obstacles.
Me too. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. This has been a great talk. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, friends, for joining us. If you enjoyed the show, there are many more episodes and messages just like this that can be found on the Fresh Blood Killing It After 40 podcast, as well as the subsequent YouTube channel or at the joliedowns.com website. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful and fulfilling day.